is Osahun. I'll be your instructor. I'll be guiding you through a lab, and the objective of this lab is to configure an EC2 web instance as IIS web server. The process is simple and straightforward. First of all, we are going to create a server, and then we convert it to a web server. We create a virtual machine, and this is the architectural structure. So we are going to look at creating this server on AWS cloud, and we are going to look at the other boundary line, which is the region where this server is hosted. We are going to create the server, which is the EC2, and underneath the EC2 we have the AMI, which is Amazon Machine Image, which practically serves as the operating system, hosts the application. Okay, we have the AZ, which is the availability zone. So in a region we can have multiple availability zones for scalability and also for availability. And underneath we have our security group, and we have our instance. So we are going to make this server public by enabling our HTTP and HTTPS. So the inbound rule, we allow HTTP and HTTPS protocol, converting the server to a web server, so it will be public. Everyone can access it on the web. So with the little architectural structure, we are going straight on to our AWS cloud, and I'll be guiding you on what to do. It's pretty much simple. In few seconds, having a good understanding, you'll know what to do. First, I'm going to launch my EC2. The next thing, I'll launch my instance. I'll tag a name for the server I'm going to launch. I'll choose my operating system, should be running on Windows. Straight on, I want to make use of Microsoft Windows Server 2022. This is the operating system I'll be running on. And by default, I'll be using the default instance type, which is T2 micro, the family, the number of CPU, and the memory size. So going down is keep-help. So I may choose to use the default or create a new or use the created. So creating is simple. It's just clicking on create new keep-help, tag the name, and that is all. So you have it on the list. So I'm going to select what I have here, and I'll move down. So this is the network setting. I'll click on edit network setting. I'm going to use the default VPC, which is the network, practically the network on the cloud. I'm going to select a subnet. The subnet is zone specific. So we are going to look at the two zones here. We have two zones in the region, and I can choose to use US East 1A or US East 1B. So from the architectural structure, I'm going to use A this time. You can see the auto assign public IP is enabled, so we'll leave it as enabled. I'll move down to my firewall, which is the security group. At this point, I may decide to use an existing if I have, okay, or I will choose to create a new. For the purpose of this training, I'll be creating a new. So I'll give the name as Windows. And now I will set my rules. First is the inbound security group rule. By default, we have our RDP. Without this, we cannot create a virtual machine. We cannot connect. It's impossible, practically impossible. So it is by default here. And we can see the protocol. So we want to make this server to be a web server. So therefore, we are going to add additional security rule. At this point, we are going to call a protocol HTTP, and the source type we are going to select anywhere, and we are going to add another security group, which is HTTPS, and the source type anywhere. So take a careful look. To HTTP, we have the port range as 80, and HTTPS we have it as 443. So at this point, we have addressed the firewalls, and also we have completed every information regarding network setting for this server. So we go down, we look at the storage, 30 gig, and this is what is tied to the AMI, which is the operating system, the default value, which is called the root value. So at this point, there's a quick summary of what we have done. We are creating one instance. We can choose to make it 2, 3, 4, 5. That means we are creating more than one of this server. We can see the software image, the operating system we choose, the family, the number of CPU, and the memory. Okay, we selected T2 micro. We have actually worked on the firewalls and the security group. We focus on the inbound rows just to make it public, accessible on the web. We can see the storage volume, which is by default 30 gig, and at this point I click on launch my instance. So I can either click on this directly to access the created instance of the server, or I click on view all. So I'll click on this. It takes me directly to the one-line summary. You can see at this point the instant state is running. That means if it was not a free tier, your system has gone live, your server has gone live, and you will start being built. Why? Because it's showing running. But at this point, we still have some work to do and some check to look out for. We can see the status check is initializing. We are going to wait to see how successful it is. It will be either 2/2 or 3/3. Okay, outcome. But while we wait for 2/2 or 3/3, we can just take a quick check on the details. Now we can see the public IP, we can see the private IP, we can see the public IPv DNS, we can see the status, and every single information on the instance. We can see the VPC ID that we just used, the subnets, and every single action is here. So I'll click on refresh. So we have created a web server, a server on the cloud. The next thing we are going to focus on is creating a virtual machine that we can host the web server. On the virtual machine, we'll put our content. So as we are waiting for the status check to be fully completed, I'll click on connect. I'll come to the RDP, which is the remote desktop protocol client. So I click on this. At this point, I move down to download remote desktop file. So when I click on this, it downloads by default. We can see it here. And now we are going to look at get password. At this point, remember the password we selected. I'm going to click on upload the password which we created or which we selected. So that should be here as a test file. I'm going to decrypt the password. So therefore, look at my password, decrypted password. At this point, I will go to the downloaded Windows server. I'll click on it. Now I'm trying to create a virtual machine, okay, that we can host the website. I'll click on this, asking for the password. I'm going to supply the password that I decrypted. I'll click on OK. Yes. Now, I'll wait a little bit. So this is set up. My Windows virtual machine is being created. This is hosted in the cloud. So I'll wait. So this interface is totally different and is hosted in, we can see it here, is hosted in AWS cloud, and we can see the region where this particular interface or this virtual machine is hosted. So all the information here, the private, the public IP, the instant ID, the host name, all the information here speak to where the server is being hosted as a virtual machine. At this point, I'm going to proceed with configuration of the server. So I'll go to the server manager. It takes few seconds to update. Now, if you take a careful look, it is initializing. So we just give it maybe 2 minutes to fully initialize, and then we'll proceed with our settings of our roles and features. So just observe the changes here. So we have local server, we have all server, We can see the file storage. Okay, session has been updated, showing that it is fully initialized. So now I'll do my setup, add rows and feature. Just click on nests, 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 and then remember we are creating a web server, an IIS web server. So I select this, add the feature. I'll have to click on nests, 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 everything here. We leave it as default. Click on nests, and finally I'll click on install. Wait a little, just a little bit, maximum 2 minutes for complete installation. So while we are waiting for the installation to be completed, I'll go to the C drive. Just take a careful look at the C drive, which is this PC and C drive. So take a careful look. We are going to look at the root folder, okay? And that will be fine in this session. inet pub. So I'll double click on it. I'll go to www root, double click on it. So this is the tests. This is the index HTML file that is here by default. So I'm going to select and delete, and then I'll be creating my own test file. This is what I want to make public. So on this test file, I'll click on it, go in, and I'll just put a name here or the content. Thanks. This is the content. I'll click on file, save as, index.html. I'll click on save. I cannot close this. I can delete this, okay, because I've been able to create the index file. At this point, I can either close or minimize. So let's look at our installation. It is complete, so click on close. So at this point, what I've done, we have created the virtual machine in the AWS cloud. We have configured it, and we have created our content that will be visible to the public on the web. So at this point, we are going back to our EC2 instance. I'll click back on instance, and we can see it is 2/2 check pass. So it is selected already by default. I'll go down to either the public IP, click on this, it will create a new, it will launch on a new tab. Okay, it's an unsecured site. So we can see here it's giving us thanks for your support. So the content that was attached to the notepad and save as index.html is what displays on the site. So if you want to create an EC2 Windows website, this is simply the process. Straight on and direct. Create the EC2 instance, feed in all the parameters, and then configure the virtual machine by connecting it using the RODP protocol. Thank you so much for your time and have a good day.